you like money?
Yes.
Wrong button. Do you like beer? Do you hate immediate gratification and insist upon waiting 4 to 6 weeks before enjoying the fruits of your labor? If you do, homebrewing might be for you. With a little bit of money and a high capacity to watch water boil, you could be a homebrewer. I'm going to go over the costs, how brewing works, example of a recipe, stories from my successes, and branching out. So the cost. It's about $100, $125 for equipment to get started and for ingredients for your first batch. You get a couple buckets, couple fermenting vessels, some measuring equipment, and some malt and hops and yeast for your first batch. It's about $30 to $40 per batch going forward. And remember, you're making good beer. 6-pack of good beer is around $7 to $9 at a store. You can get around 8 6-packs out of a batch. It's $56 to $72 worth of good beer that you made. You can buy other beer if you are so inclined at a much cheaper price. But home brews will give you a better taste. You'll get toasted cereal malt with caramel notes and an earthy floral hop finish, while other beer might give you, faint beer flavor overpowered by tepid St. Louis city water. So cheaper? Yes. Better tasting? No. Seriously. So when you're brewing, the first thing we're going to do is add some water to a kettle and start the heat. If called for in the recipe, you can steep some grains to get a little bit more color, a little bit more of a taste to it. After about 20 minutes, bring that to a boil and add the extract. For beginning brewing, extract usually works better. It's like if you make chicken soup, a lot of times you add bouillon to kind of get that soup base started. And we now have pre-fermented beer or wort. Return that to a boil and add bittering hops. Boil for an hour and add flavor and aromatic hops as indicated. Hops can offer you 2 different flavors. There's the part that you smell and the part that you taste. The longer that you boil it, the more of the smell wears off. So when you add them in the beginning, that's the part you're going to taste, and if you add them towards the end, that's the part you're going to smell more. After that, cool the wort down to usually in the 60 to 70 degree range, and add the yeast. Just like any other living organism, if you put them in boiling water, they're not going to live long. Add water to give yourself about 5 gallons. After 7 to 10 days, rack or transfer to a secondary fermenter. During that time, some other sediments from the brewing process might have settled out. So you put it into another fermenter and let it ferment a little bit longer, 2 to 3 more weeks, maybe longer based on the recipe. Lagers will sometimes go for months in a cooler condition to lager, as they call it. On bottling day, you can add a little bit of corn sugar to carbonate the beer, to add it to the bucket. That'll kind of jumpstart the yeast. Then when you put it into a bottle and cap it, they'll still ferment a little bit, and then that CO2 that they make will get dissolved, carbonating your beer. You can also keg the beer to force carbonate it. So you put all the beer into a keg, and you add CO2 to the keg. And based on the temperature of the beer and the pressure of the carbon dioxide, you can carbonate it to your specific taste, shown simply by this chart. So, no? Okay, but yeah, so there's for different styles, there's different ranges of carbonation, but really if bubbles help beer a lot. That's me with my youngest Maddie, when she, probably about 4 years ago, we're making our first batch of beer. Or her first batch, I should say. I've done it before. It wasn't 5 minutes later, and she told me to get out and shut off the camera. This is proprietary information. An example of a recipe is this Czech Pilsner. We use this 3.15 pounds of Pilsner malt syrup, which we add at the beginning. It also calls for it added later. Hops, we have 2 ounces of Saaz hops added at the beginning of the boil, and then another ounce added later with 15 minutes left. Wye yeast is one of the big yeast producers. They have a Czech Pils yeast that we used for this one. You want to ferment at 48 to 58 degrees. That's important. And then the priming sugar is some sugar that you can add for bottling day. Add that to the bucket right before you bottle. Mistakes happen. So just as the previous thing said, the instructions said 48 to 58 is the temperature for a lager. So despite it telling me 48 to 58 degrees, if you put your bucket on top of your air conditioning vent and tape a bag of frozen peas to it, that's not going to be cold enough. That's beer I had to dump out, because the difference between the lagers and the temperature that they ferment at does make a difference, and it sometimes makes it not taste very good. I once tried to make a pumpkin beer, and if you know a lot of pumpkin taste, it's kind of flat and bland, really. And if you take that and make it even more liquid than a puree, then it really just kind of rolls right off your tongue and has no taste at all. So I thought I'd put that into a beer, and then once it carbonates, that effervescence is going to help it. And it never carbonated. I gave it another month, it never carbonated. I gave it another 2 months, it never carbonated, and tasted more and more like turpentine. So that one I dumped out. I tried to use coconut in a beer once. So that one grew a white waxy film along the top of it. I tried to use spices once. That grew some green fuzzies in it. Not all of them turn out, but generally if you keep things clean, it's going to be drinkable. That's what's phenomenal. Beer's great, but what else is there? A lot of people like wine. It's pretty easy to make wine as well. You just get some, you can buy the grape juice from wine grapes at stores, make wine. I also really like making mead, where you take honey and you ferment it. If you think about honey without all this sweetness to it, and all this sweetness ferments out of it, it kind of just tastes like flowers. So a lot of times I'll add some fruit to it, like cherries or blackberries. Can I make liquor? Home distillation is legal in all 50 states, mostly from a safety standpoint. After you ferment it and you've got your fermented wort now, you distill by separating based on temperature. So you heat it up, and then whatever boils off is going to be alcohol. When you heat it up, the first thing that boils off is methanol, which, if it doesn't make you blind, will kill you. And so homebrewers aren't too careful about that sometimes, and there's been cases where multiple people die from drinking people's home distillations. The next part that comes off is the ethanol, which is the part that we enjoy. So I mean, people not being able to discern between the two is why it can be dangerous to distill at home. So I can't say that it's okay to distill at home. It's expanding your hobby. Major breweries start out as home brewers oftentimes. They enjoy making beer. They make some, they give it to friends and family, they get feedback, they work on their consistency, and how it differs, because people have some very specific tastes, and if you can't make yours taste the same way every time, people will know the difference. Distillers don't have that option. I've found that there's like a week-long class that you can take to give you some hands-on training with home distillation, but after that you still go back home where you can't do it by yourself. You can also try to get your foot in the door at a family distillery, or you can just start a distillery. Go out, start a business, start distilling, and hope you like it. And for the entrepreneurs out there, does it seem like a very good idea to just start a business with little to no training? Yeah, it's something an idiot would do. So with that, I'd like to take 1 to 2 minutes of any question and answers you might have about home brewing. And that was a joke. I'm not going to actually open a distillery. Yes, Ross.
What is the volume that you produce or have on hand over time? Do you do a batch at a time?
It depends how much equipment you have. Usually when you get a starter kit, you'll have enough to make 5 gallons, and then it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to get through it, and then you'll be able to use that same equipment again. But if you have 2 different fermenters for each stage, you might be able to stagger them and have one going while another's going. It just depends how many buckets you want to have. I've got a few, I've got two things sitting right now, and I probably have enough to make one or two more if I wanted to.
But Ross wants to know if he can come over and drink some beer.
Yeah, do you need help?
Not currently. Once I empty those other two buckets, then yes, I will.
Well, that was my question. Is
Okay.
it legal for you to share this with friends, families, and enemies?
Yes. Forget exactly. As long as it's giving away, I'm not charging money. I forget all of the legal parts of it, but yeah, there is. And if you're into that sort of thing, I can look it up. But no, you can give it. I know it's perfectly fine to give it to friends and family, but I know there was something about like the fact that homebrew clubs get together and they bring their beer, where they're still friends. But I remember there's being something about that they had to actually write something in to make that okay. And you can also make up to 50 gallons a year and not get in trouble for it. But I don't know how they measure that anyway. So. Jeff.
Ryan, do you take donations? Like empty bottles that may need filling?
Yeah. As long as there's something to fill them with, I can take bottles. I also have a keg, which bottles are good because they travel better than a keg does. And these are excellent examples of a bottle. Notice the dark color. You don't want clear bottles because the light and the UV will kill the hop flavor, and that's what makes it skunky.
You don't put beer in a green one, typically. This is a cider bottle.
Yes.
Nice job.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you.